You could take like the analysis for AI, like the world's most hyped athlete, let's say a gymnast. Like he's been in stars in every commercial leading up to the Olympics. You see everything that this gymnast can do. They're hyping it up. It's the athlete of the year. Then you finally see him or her perform. They do their first flip and fall on their back. Right? The landing hasn't been stuck for a lot of people for AI.
Yeah.
Right? It's been hyped and it's fallen on their back. The first time people saw AI, their iPhones are giving them notifications that were grouped and summarized, and they were botched completely.
Yep.
Apple's announcing Apple Intelligence that's coming in 6 months. Or they make a little emoji on their phone and they forget about it.
I love that feature though.
Or they're creating an image on their phone and then forget about what it is. It's been hyped, but the landing has not been stuck universally.
John, how are you doing?
It's been a minute, man.
It has.
It's been a long start to the year, but I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm okay too. It was a long end of the year and start to the year for me as well. But I'm feeling back. I'm feeling 100% ready to take over the world. We've got a lot to go over. Let's stop playing games. Let's stop playing around here. We've got one of the best guests in the business.
I'd say arguably the best guest in the business.
Right. I mean, that's what we try to bring to the people. So this week, joining us, Taylor Lorenz. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. Excited to be
Absolutely.
here.
Welcome back to the show. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about, so let's just jump in. Yesterday was the Super Bowl. I'm not a big sports ball guy, but even people like me tune in. We got to be a part of the zeitgeist, which is a word that when I see in my email, I promptly delete it and don't even respond to the person.
You're gonna start and talk about sports is like me talking about fashion.
Right.
But listen, let's do it.
Well, I'm not even talking about the sport itself, but there was a commercial that aired during. Actually, there were a few tech commercials, but one that I wanted to point out was T-Mobile announcing this Starlink capability and the resulting, what's the word people used to use? FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yes,
that I saw almost instantly on TikTok, Instagram, basically any vertical video platform for some reason. The horizontal ones, I haven't seen too much negative talk about this. But what's happening is...
So first, can we explain what T-Mobile's doing and why it's different than like what Apple's got on the iPhones now? Because it's a huge like fundamental shift in what that can do.
So what T-Mobile has done is they've partnered with Starlink. And what Starlink is it's a constellation of satellites above us, going above the Earth, that allows, right now it allows people to buy a satellite dish and use that for their internet service as long as their dish can see a Starlink satellite in the sky. So what T-Mobile has done is they're using their cell towers to... Why? Hold on. Sorry about that, guys. That was...
You did.
I need to turn this off. Why does it do... That's annoying. I have a webcam that's an AI webcam that lets you do these hand gestures, but it uses natural hand gestures that people do anyway in everyday life to just zoom in. Anyway, whatever. So T-Mobile is now allowing Starlink to replicate their 1900 megahertz band 25 signal. So if you happen to be in an area where there's no cell tower, or if you're in a disaster area where the cell towers are out and not working, you can still connect. Your phone will still see an LTE T-Mobile signal that is being sent from the satellite, connect to that, and you can now send, or when it goes live, you'll be able to send text messages. And in the future, Starlink is saying eventually you'll be able to do, web surfing and maybe even, FaceTime calls, but that's down the line. It's starting with text messaging, and it'll be a $15 add-on. Apple announced that in iOS 18.3, which was released last week, this capability has been added. And people went crazy thinking that Apple has added Starlink into their phone, which is now allowing Elon Musk's company to track everything you do on your phone. And when I say that, I feel like it sounds crazy for me to say that, but people legitimately believe this with all their being. People made videos about it, and I'll go to the comments to see this person made a video, that's fine. But you go to the comments to see, and there's like 100,000 comments, and people are just like, thank you so much for warning me about this. I turned off these settings, and I'm just like, what is happening? Anyhow, what do you think about this, John? I'm like blown away because obviously there's tech nerds and tech gurus and tech aficionados and people who watch videos of people like us.
Yep.
Then there's people who don't really care, right? They just buy a phone because it's a tool, it's a utility, and they don't really know much more about it. But when I see this sentiment out there, I worry. I worry for humanity in some ways.
I mean, I think the technology behind this is fundamentally extremely impressive. But like anything new that's been introduced, it comes with a level of misunderstanding, right? This service hasn't even rolled out yet. It is in like the most exclusive of betas. You could sign up for it. I think once the service rolls out and there's understanding for what it does, this will all fall by the wayside, personally.
So you don't think people are super worried about being tracked?
I think people are generally super worried about being tracked. This adds nothing else to the already being tracked of the phone as a whole. You're carrying around a device with multiple GPS signals, Wi-Fi that can triangulate your location, multiple microphones that are debatably always on. There's bigger fish in this pond than a beta with T-Mobile, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I feel like the narrative that Elon Musk has gotten access to our phones or whatever, because this came on my TikTok feed also, and there is no amount of information that you can give to people that will convince them that this is not true. Like, I mean, I tried to also in the comments very fruitlessly, like, so that's actually like not what's happening. And it doesn't, it's like, I think people are so scared of like Elon right now. They're seeing what's happening in the government. Like, they just are sort of primed to believe this stuff. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like it might have some sort of trickle down effect of just broadly people just sort of believing a lot of this misinformation.
What's also interesting is a lot of the sentiment was around Apple teaming up with Elon, but this, the Starlink T-Mobile service has been in beta for quite a while, about a year. Apple devices were able to join in the beta as of last week. It was all Android devices prior to that, because obviously the more open nature of Android allowed T-Mobile and Starlink to create a special app. You don't even have to go through the App Store. They can send it to you. You can sideload it, right? But you never saw anything about that. It was big Apple and big Elon, I guess, because I think Taylor hit the nail on the head. If Elon Musk didn't run Starlink, would this even be a topic of conversation at all?
No one would care, I feel. And I don't think enough people use Android, like in the broader consumer public, like the people that are making these TikTok videos. Like, I think they're all iPhone users and they're not paying attention to like niche Android news.
There's also an existing swath of Starlink partnerships. You've got rolling out on United Airplanes. Microsoft has a partnership with Starlink. This is not a new partnership. And I think to Taylor's point, it probably is something new to maybe folks who are on an iPhone that felt insulated from this. You know, while they're talking to Siri and results are coming back, you know, boomeranging from ChatGPT, you know, they can ask about privacy and Microsoft's sort of Apple's third-party partnerships. This is like, if you don't want to be tracked, don't have a phone. Like, it's really what it is. I don't think there's anything nefarious with it, Elon or anything else that's going on, but the expectation of not only privacy but anonymity when you're using a mobile phone should be close to zero.
Fair enough.
I mean, that doesn't matter what VPN you're subscribing to, what service you are using. You have that phone turned on, depending on who you ask. When you have that phone turned off, you are alerting people where you are, and they are aware of what you are doing. And I think any expectation to the contrary at this point in time is crazy.
Yeah, so I tell any sources to leave their phone at home if they're worried about being tracked.
I mean, people don't even realize when they post on social media, the metadata in those pictures are pinpointing their device and their exact location. But they're worried. They're worried about the boogeyman on a third-party service looking into their phone and information. You can't. I'm going to sound apologies. You can't fight ignorance with knowledge. Like you just can't. Right. And I don't want to use stupidity because I think it's generally ignorance, but algorithm's going to push, the algorithm's going to push, and eyes are going to push what the eyes are going to get, and people are going to keep making it no matter what.
Fair point. Because I was going to try to fight the ignorance with knowledge. And I'm creating a video And as I'm creating this video, I'm thinking to myself, this is just going to get people like mad at me in the comments, which I'm fine for. That'll be the engagement. Yeah. I'm very interested to see how receptive people are to the information as opposed to telling me that, you're just believing, whatever.
Yeah, people on the internet are generally really receptive to new ideas that contradict things that they've already believed.
They love fact checks.
Yeah.
Those always go more viral than the misinformation.
Yeah. So it's probably going to go great for you.
Right. We'll see. All right. Today is February 10th as we record this. Tomorrow's February 11th, which is rumored to be the day that Apple announces for the first time in, I believe, is it 3 years, a new iPhone SE?
The iPhone SE was based on the iPhone 8. The last one, 3 years.
3 years.
We've had one update, yeah.
So we're going to get a new iPhone SE, the iPhone SE 4, which, at least from what I see, looks like the best iPhone SE that Apple has ever made. Not because it's the newest, but like if you go back to each release of the SE, they generally seem to be not the most current device. It's more like almost like an afterthought device for people that just, I just want to get a cheap phone. I really don't care about phones at all. I just want something to carry around. But I feel like what we're seeing here, we're going to get into AI later, but the one big benefit that I think we're all getting, if you're an Apple user, from Apple Intelligence is the fact that Apple is updating all their devices with the specs to be able to run Apple Intelligence, which means this iPhone SE is going to be rocking a processor that's modern enough to run Apple Intelligence and will have 8 gigabytes of RAM in it. So I doubt that if Apple Intelligence wasn't a thing that you would see that powerful of a phone at the very, very low end.
No, and you're looking at should be the A18 chip, which is currently in the iPhone 16. So
that's even crazier. I was wondering if it'd be an A17 Pro from last year or an A18 that is the chip in their flagship device.
Yeah, the rumors are all over the place. 8 gigs of RAM is supposed to be expected. Single camera on the back, 48 megapixel camera, which should be relatively solid. The same main camera that's on the iPhone 16. We should see the display also getting bigger. Should go to 6.1 inches, which is nice for a more modern standard phone.
And OLED.
OLED's questionable, I think, at this point.
Really?
Up from 4.7 in size. Yeah. Generally, most have said OLED, in all fairness. Most have said OLED. In-house designed 5G modem as sort of a test bed for it. A lot of different rumors on the notch or no notch or dynamic island. Should be a pretty nice size, just under 3,300 milliamp hour battery, which should make it last all day. The big question mark, I think, is price. So the current iPhone SE starts at $429. I think as long as they can keep it below $500, these things will absolutely fly, especially because it looks like a modern iPhone. Personally.
This thing in here. Yeah. What do you think, Taylor? Here we see a leaked image from Spigen, the case company, case manufacturer. These always come from the case manufacturers. But it's a last minute one, so basically it seems like this is accurate. Mm-hmm. So we see a notch, not a dynamic island.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's questionable. Phone. These come from the dummies. I have this dummy that this is based off of.
Okay.
I do. I have this exact dummy. You can't tell anything from the screen. That they've rendered on to the screen, a screen beyond. That same case could have a dynamic island without changing the design of the case, which is really all they're doing. So from this, you can read to the physical design, but I think it tells nothing about the display.
Okay.
I mean, I think this is a great, cheap phone option. And I know a lot of people that have, kids and stuff, and the teen wants an iPhone, and they're like, all right, this is a good sort of affordable option. And it's coming with a lot more than it used to, so.
If I was a teen, I'd be mad. If I'm being honest.
Because I'd want the newest, the hottest thing. But
come on, right?
But if I'm a parent, I'm not buying. My kid's definitely getting the SE, 100%.
John, where do you stand on this? Because my son is an adult now, so I can't really chime in on this.
It's true.
Do your kids have smartphones yet?
No,
How old is
my oldest is 11. He is most definitely not having a smartphone. He did make a pitch for it that he wants to be able to message his friends, so he has an Apple. He has an Apple Watch with cellular, so he can now message his friends. And we can call him, and that is about all the trouble he can get into on that. So I think it's a great phone. I think for kids or anybody that wants an inexpensive iPhone, I think this is going to sell 1 million units. I give Apple credit for not trying to make a really small version, a really big version. Just make like here's a vanilla version of a modern phone. We know you want it. It's here and it exists, and it probably won't get updated now for another 8 years.
Right. Or I would say probably another 3 or 4 years. Like, yeah, that's kind of the cadence they've been doing with this device. Yeah. I feel like it's going to sell a lot, but I always wonder who the customer is. Like before this comes out, right? 6 months ago, because there's an iPhone SE right now that you can buy. 6 months ago, who is going into the Apple store and buying an iPhone SE with a home button?
That's crazy,
right? Old iPhone 8 design, right? Like they sell, but like I have a hard time. Like, is it? I'm not trying to be ageist, but is it just old people? Like, who's buying these?
Okay, I feel like it's a lot of like people that want an affordable phone, like a cheap phone. Like I do actually think it's a lot of parents buying it for young people. Like I that is like the phone that at least I know people that have like tweens or whatever. That's what they get because you can still have TikTok on it, whatever. But it's like the bare bones. And I also think like there's a lot. I've noticed a lot more people that have like secondary phones for whatever reason, or like they have a work phone that's the real iPhone and they just kind of want a secondary phone, or they just want a really cheap phone. I mean, I just bought I had to get a new iPhone last year. I have the 16, I think. Like, what did I even have? I can't even remember, but it was so expensive. And I was like, I went through this thing in the Apple store. Like I went to like physically see the phones, which I haven't done in a while. But I was just like, do I even need all this crap? Like most of what I do is texting. And I'm a tech reporter.
Right.
So like, I mean, I don't know, like it just gets to the point too where like, it just starts to seem so expensive. And you're like, do I need it?
I'm going to hit you with some facts, Andrew.
Please do.
67% of phones purchased in the US in 2024 were bought from a carrier. So either directly from a store or through AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon.com.
So not going to the Apple store, not going to like an Apple store.
I think not going to do a Samsung experience, right? But the fraction of people that are bought from a Samsung experience store, we'll probably count on about 2 hands. People that are walking into a carrier store saying, I want a new iPhone. They're like, great. Do you want this one for $900? Or do you want this one for $430? They're like, give me the $430 one. It is a easy sell for people who just want, quote, the new iPhone. And if you want to sign a contract, the phone's free. It's only going to add $12 per month to your plan. It's not just I don't think it's just for kids. I think the mass appeal of an inexpensive, newer looking iPhone is huge.
Totally. And I think, by the way, it also works for what most people do on their iPhone.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I mean,
Facebook, texting.
Just the most basic things. It's like how I mean, I had a Chromebook for a while and I was like, this actually works. Now I have a MacBook to do sort of more video stuff. But it's like, most of what you do is browse the web or whatever. Like most people are not doing sort of complex stuff.
This is interesting because we have Taylor Lorenz here. Again, she's a tech reporter. And you were like, I don't even know what phone I bought one. I don't even know what I got. I don't even know what I got. Like, is it the 16? I don't know.
The thing is that I have a problem of like constantly losing and breaking my phones. And so I'm sort of constantly in a state of replacing my phone.
What do you do with them?
There's always some kind of drama. I literally have one of these giant otter boxes on it now because I dropped it off a 2-story building, which is what led to.
What does that happen? Was that on
broke,
purpose?
And every time I post about it, people are like, Apple fans, like, oh no, it's actually most of them don't break, so it's actually quite surprising that it would happen this way because it's actually probably due to your case, and if you just remove the case.
So Andrew, can I pivot? I have a question I want to ask Taylor about like internet culture and tech culture. So we all either at CES or attended CES, we've heard the term AI and artificial intelligence seemingly nonstop ad nauseum for, let's say, 3 to 4 years is really when sort of that started kicking up. And we saw things that people were happy to promote at CES. We saw LG's AI robot. We saw AI-capable bird feeder, refrigerators, moonwalkers, AI-informed shoes. We saw AI in massage chairs. We saw belts with AI and dog bowls with AI. At some point, the word means nothing, right? And at some point, people just stop caring. Like, are we at the point where companies are marketing AI to just blank faces?
Yeah.
Like when I asked my kids if they did their homework.
I think that we're definitely at the saturation point where people will just put AI on anything. An AI massage chair sounds hilarious. Also, because my last experience at CES several years ago, I got trapped in a massage chair that malfunctioned, and it
on the show floor,
clamped onto me, and
oh wow!
And I was like, that was my last time at CES. Not because of that.
I don't blame you.
It was hilarious. I do think though on the consumer side, people still get excited about it. Like, I don't think that I think people are starting to recognize it as a buzzword, but I think that the buzzword still carries kind of like a sheen of sounding like new or, like advanced in somehow. Because people are, I think there are a lot of cool AI products still too. And people are still surprised by ChatGPT but I think we're reaching saturation, and I think truly within the next year, it will start to like lose its luster.
I mean, you look at in my opinion, like the useful features of AI, and I think there's less emphasis on the use case for AI and more broadly on this thing has AI, right? Like the bird feeder's got AI. That's great. What it's going to do is from your phone, it's going to identify what kind of bird it is. It'll tell you facts about the birds if that's your jam. And I'll tell you how much food is left and what kind of food the birds are eating so you can tweak it. Like, that's interesting. But you just hear AI-enabled bird feeder, and it is like glassy-eyed. And you see these processor manufacturers. You see what Intel's doing, what we can do with NVIDIA, Apple's A series of chips, the Qualcomm, Snapdragon Elite line. Like, the capability for AI is amazing. I just, at the point where I don't think people care anymore. And almost the expectation is the AI is there. If I need it, stop talking about it.
Yeah. I think people are getting sick of the buzzwordiness. But like you said, if you explain what the AI is doing, I do think that there's things that will make it exciting. I also just still think that when people hear AI, I don't know that we're at the point, though, where they don't expect anything of it. Like if you were to tell people like, oh, I have a car and then I have an AI-enabled car system or whatever, and a regular car, so like people still will think, oh, well, that one's a little bit more forward or that one's a little bit more advanced. Not that they might, I think AI is also becoming increasingly related with like spammy things that don't work.
Yeah.
Glitchy things. Because like sometimes when I hear AI-enabled whatever, I'm like, okay, it's going to break. It's not going to work.
Beta.
Because it's just like something that people claim and shove onto their products. Also, most of what is considered AI too is just sort of not actually AI.
No, it's
interesting.
So what do we need to do, or what do companies need to do to get people interested in the technology? Is it selling the use case to people again?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a use case, and I think it's also like empowering people. Like sometimes you hear AI, you think, oh great, is it just gonna like automate this in an annoying way or something, like the AI coffee maker or something? But it's like, no, it's actually like, I guess it goes back to the use case. It's like, here's why this is good, here's why it's gonna help you, and here's how it's different.
I feel like we have many levels of people as it pertains to AI, almost how you were explaining earlier with the iPhones. I'm like, who's buying these? And you're like, here's a great example of people who will buy these, right? I feel like with AI, there's the hardcore tech people who jumped in as soon as ChatGPT, oh, what is that? I'm going there immediately. I'm going to start using it right away. There's the people in their periphery who they tell about it, right? Then there's the people who understand it to the point where they're tech people and they see reasons to fear it, or at least fear the future and have worries about it. There's the people who don't know anything about it and fear it, right? Because like my mom, I was talking to her about, she's like, I don't even know about that. I don't know. I don't want to get, like, why? It's just, I'm trying to explain to her, like, instead of like using Google, you can just put your question into this thing and it'll actually give you a full, no, that sounds weird. So like it feels like there's so many levels of people who, and then the people in between who are like, oh, this is cool. I can do this on my phone and it'll write this text for me, or it'll do my homework or whatever it is. And it's like a rainbow, but it's people who are just on different levels of acceptance or unacceptance of AI.
Well, then there's the AI backlash too, which I think we're seeing, where people explicitly don't want AI, or they don't like AI, or they're very like against the concept of AI.
And now see, that's the one, like, what is that? Like, is that from the people who understand it or the people who do not? People who tried it and don't like it, or people who just...
it's people that don't understand it, but feel this sort of feeling like they're losing control to technology, feeling like there's this tech creep of their life. And like, I don't know, people just, it feels like you said kind of maybe how your mom might feel of like just too much. It's like, oh, that makes me nervous, or I'm sort of ethically opposed. I've heard that it's destroying the rainforest and I don't like AI.
I feel, I'm again, sports guy. You could take like the analysis for AI, like the world's most hyped athlete, let's say a gymnast. Like he's been in stars in every commercial leading up to the Olympics. You see everything that this gymnast can do. They're hyping it up. It's the athlete of the year. Then you finally see him or her perform and do their first flip and fall on their back. Right? The landing hasn't been stuck for a lot of people for AI.
Yeah.
Right? It's been hyped and it's fallen on their back. The first time people saw AI, their iPhones are giving them notifications that were grouped and summarized, and they were botched completely. Apple's announcing Apple Intelligence that's coming in 6 months, or they make a little emoji on their phone and they forget about it.
Yeah, I love that feature though.
Or they're creating an image on their phone and then forget about what it is. It's been hyped, but the landing has not been stuck universally, and they haven't shown a universal use case, I don't think, for most people to say, I see how this is going to make my life easier on a day in and day out basis. I think for a lot of people, myself included, it's great when it works, but it's not worth the hassle, is the answer that a lot of people are giving to AI right now. I think that's definitely going to change. I think we're probably pretty close to that changing. But people's first experiences with technology is, I think, for the most part, been very botched.
I think there's something to be said for the laziness of people, because
100%.
Well, here's why. I think aside from the chatbot version of AI, right, where you talk back and forth to a chatbot, and it's very impressive, right, what these chatbots can do and what they can, find for you and put together for you. That's very easy to understand because it's just conversation. Most AI, I think, the AI that's in the background, the AI that just does stuff for you and then just presents it to you, like, you take a picture with your iPhone or your Samsung or your Pixel. The reason those pictures look so good is because of AI, but you don't have to go in and tap around and make it look good yourself. It just makes it look good, and then here you go, right? Or like a great portrait mode photo or something like that, for example.
Absolutely.
So there is a lot of AI out there, or like, I drive a Tesla Model Y, full self-driving, right? Like, obviously you got to pay attention to what it's doing, but for the most part, for the vast majority of the time that I use it, it's very impressive, right? I just have to like kind of monitor it and make sure, and I can just go along for the ride, and it's pretty smooth the majority of the time. AI where you have to do something like, let me generate an image. Oh, I didn't prompt it the right way, and it looks corny, or, AI that the person has to do or has to kind of control feels kind of like you said, it's not quite there yet because it's too difficult to use. Right? So if it was easy, I don't think it would be as annoying.
Yeah, and I think getting it wrong, like the Apple notifications.
Right.
I mean, my friend just got one from Hinge that said 2 of her Hinge people had matched with each other, and which was
incredible notification.
And I actually reached out to Hinge because I was like, is Apple sharing match data? No, it just had summarized, basically that she had matched with both of them. So it just like, I feel like things like that make people, John, like you were saying, sort of skeptical, and then that leaves a bad taste in their mouth.
I mean, listen, I challenge anybody out there with a modern iPhone capable of Apple Intelligence to test it. Test what Apple is selling you. And obviously in the US, the largest manufacturer of smartphones, do what's going viral right now. Take a picture, put glasses on your face, hold your hand up, use Apple's generative fill to carve that out with your finger, and see what a monster you look like when that's done. I did it with my glasses, and I had like another eye that showed up. My nose somehow moved to the side of my face, and part of my glasses melted into my forehead. Right? And that's Apple right now in February 2025. And that's a feature they are selling you and they are marketing to you. Maybe if you want to remove a fire hydrant from a picture, probably will look okay unless you want to pixel peep around. But there's a feature that people can try to use that fundamentally doesn't work yet, right?
Let's talk about that for a second, though, because the marketing of that one and I'm not making an excuse here because I feel like either you're going to do it or you're not going to do
Sure.
it. The way Apple's marketing cleanup is we will remove distractions from the background of your photo. Not from, they don't want to deal with the foreground. They don't want to create a new face. They don't want to create a new hand, right? For me, it's like, well, if you don't want to create a new face, then don't let me do it. If you don't want to create a new hand, then when I circle it, say, oh, we don't, please select something from the background or something. Don't let me do it and then say, well, that's not what it's meant for, which is what they're doing right now.
And especially
but
when
I am curious,
can you compare
what
it to
do you
Samsung's
guys
doing?
think? Exactly. What do you guys think, though? So Apple obviously wants to guardrail themselves from, if I put my hand on my face and I remove my hand, they don't want to make a new face. They don't want to make a face that doesn't exist. They don't want Apple Intelligence to create that, right? So again, in my opinion, if you don't want to, then just don't let me. But on the bigger scale, when you do it with Samsung Galaxy AI, it'll remove your hand and it'll just generate a face. It'll fill it in and it'll look literally like you took a picture of someone. It kind of looks like you, maybe in an uncanny way, maybe a video game version of you, but it does fill it in and create a usable end result. Whereas what Apple is doing, the end result, like I saw someone holding an Apple TV remote, they removed the remote and it looked like their hand like blown up by a firecracker they forgot to like throw, before it blew up. It's not a result you would ever use for something. Which do you think is the right approach for today? Because I feel like as time goes on, it's going to be, we're going to be losing ourselves more and more to generative AI that just creates things that look very realistic. But today, as it stands, Apple's stance is we're not going to create a fake face. We're not going to create a fake body part. We're going to remove things from the background. And Samsung's stance is, or I guess Samsung/Google, is we're going to generate something. If you ask us to remove it, we're going to remove it and we're going to generate something that you can use. What do you think is the right way right now?
I undeniably think that they should generate something you can use. I mean, from a consumer standpoint, that's what people want. This is why these, tools are becoming so increasingly popular, just these like third-party rare photo apps or Adobe's, beta tools and things like that. Like people want the ability to improve their photos and that requires generative AI. And so they should do that because I think nobody's happy with what Apple is serving up. And it also just makes them seem inept. It makes me think less of Apple. Like I feel like Apple as a tech company is sort of, I don't know, they've lost a little bit of their luster maybe, I think in the consumer standpoint with stuff like this, with the botched rollout of it. Like people are just like, oh, is this company dumb? Like
And I can understand that because when you see the comparison, right? No one is going to go check and be like, oh, well, Apple says this is just for the back. Like, no, you just look at the results and you're like,
exactly.
One is clearly better than the other. And it's Samsung. Samsung clearly is better than the Apple end result when using the photo editing feature using their AI. So it makes Apple Intelligence look terrible.
If generative AI is a feature being sold, if I can ask my phone to make me a picture of a leprechaun riding a unicorn on the moon fighting the Sasquatch, and it'll make one that looks pretty decent, I should be able to make a version of a face or make a version of glasses being removed. I mean, it should be able to fill in those gaps. How many times a day are you going to make that leprechaun fighting whatever I just said? How many times you're going to want to remove something from your face? Oh, I took a picture, I have an earpods, and let me take the earpod out. Or, oh, I've got a big zit on my face. Let me go ahead and circle that and take it out. There's somebody in the background that I don't want there. These are real use cases. Obviously, the hand in from the face is extreme, right? We're not doing that often. But on the far end of what's capable, so you've got like the remove a face in front of the hand on one end, and you've got the leprechaun fighting the Yeti on the other. Apple's not existing in the middle at all. Like if they're not making an emoji or that image of the leprechaun, they're almost not doing anything in the generative space.
Right. Everything they make looks fake.
You physically take a picture with a pixel, and to your credit, that is AI. You're like, that doesn't look great. And then you wait 7 seconds. You're like, oh my God, I'm Ansel Adams. Like you can see these things happening, right? And probably Google doesn't have to let you see that happen. They could probably just show you the picture, I imagine, at this point. But you're aware that something is going on with your phone. And I know Apple is doing a lot of that without showing you what's happening. They're giving you the sausage, not showing you the gross things going on behind the scenes. But what they're delivering for flagship features for Apple Intelligence at this point is still a Siri that doesn't work, or it doesn't work any better than it did last year. I can boomerang to ChatGPT. That takes forever. I'd rather just ask ChatGPT directly. It's not quick. It doesn't save any time. I can barely use it to remove things from the background. But I can make an emoji of a frog with a unicorn horn. Like it's like
which nobody really wanted.
Exactly. Once you get past the modern day slow-fee features that they're rolling out, they haven't delivered on the AI promise. And I think, where I was coming back to my original point, that's hurting AI right now. For a lot of people, that's their first exposure to AI.
Apple Intelligence is hurting AI because it's such a mainstream feature.
I think so. And maybe more in the US. Maybe it's a US-centric approach, since I know sort of other operating systems are wider used outside. But inside the US, I think what Apple's done with their botched rollout is really harm the future of AI, or at least make people apathetic to AI at best.
So what do you think about, obviously, iOS 18.3 is out, iOS 18.4 is coming next, and that is actually supposed to be the one where Siri gets the big upgrade that was announced last June.
They're always the one.
It's
always the one.
Yeah, guys, the next one. It's like that meme of like the traffic, and they're just like, just add one more lane, just add one more lane. That's how it feels with Siri. They're like, no, guys, I know. The next one, though.
This is the one. If you stand outside with an umbrella every day saying it's going to rain, at some point, you'll be right. We're at 0.4. We are 40% of the way done with what this operating system is going to be.
Well, more than that, because they don't know. They don't go to 0.10 before the next one. But what I mean is, this is the one where Siri's going to get the personal context feature. So the feature is coming in iOS 18.4, where Siri is supposed to be able to know what's in your email, know what's in your text messages, know what's in your calendar. So when you ask,
and people are worried about Starlink knowing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, right. Well, that's the other thing too, is people are going to think that this is all going into the cloud and it's all happening on your device. Yeah. But people aren't going to. But anyway, you'll be able to say, Siri, what was that conversation I had with, John last week, where he was telling me about, what his favorite movie was or whatever. And it should be able to go into my text messages, find our text thread, and surface that to me in a way that today it definitely cannot.
I don't know, man.
That's my question. Based on what we've seen so far, are you now super apprehensive about this feature?
Yes. They also told me the Photos app was going to be better, and it is a unmitigated disaster.
I refuse to agree with you on that one.
No way. You're pro the new photo app?
Come on. First of all,
I missed that.
So remember during the beta, it was even more of an extreme change, and then they changed it. I liked the beta version. I liked that whole new layout that they did, and I was disappointed that they rolled it back. But John, all you have to do is just hit the edit button on the top right, and you can make it almost like the old one.
It is so. If you have to go and make changes to make it like the old one, you're at Sonos level of messed up your app. Listen, I'm sure Siri at one point will be excellent, and I'm sure it will be a true competitor to Gemini and ChatGPT, because Apple has a resource to pull it off. Right? I'm sure we will get there. My concern is that we get to a point where it's usable and iOS 19 gets announced. What are we going to be waiting for? Is this a perpetual announce before release? Is this what Apple's going to do now? Announce features that maybe will come 6 months down the line?
I believe so. I think that's the WWDC is now, when they announce the new operating system, it's here's our roadmap for the next year, as opposed to here's what you're going to get in September. We're not dropping all this in September.
When you ask people, and obviously this is a small sample size and only our circles, about what their opinions are on Apple Maps, what's generally the answer?
It's terrible.
The answer has changed a little bit, but it was the opinion that they got in iOS 7 remained until iOS 14. It took almost a decade for Apple to get out from under that first impression, despite the fact that Maps is great now.
And you see the point here, right?
Yeah, I see your point exactly. The first impression of Apple Intelligence kind of makes you want to just not use it, no matter how good it gets next year or the year after that.
And you've got choices now. I've got a Gemini app on my iPhone that works incredible.
Right.
I actively try to avoid using Siri unless I'm trying to control the lights in my house.
So I was just going to say that, I think the Maps comparison is a really good one too, because no matter how many times I do use Maps and it works, I still don't trust it and will always default to Google because it's like, I'm like, yeah, okay, it does work better, but that trust is broken. And I feel like you kind of have one shot, and Apple squandered it so badly that I just think it's going to be hard.
What's crazy is that was 11 and a half years ago. Like that,
Yeah.
that terrible release of Maps is over a decade ago, and still to this day, people who were around back then who used it still have that same feeling about it.
It's our trauma.
It really is.
No, but Taylor's right. Apple Maps has gotten really good. Like, I think Siri is going to get really good. But if I'm on my phone picking a navigation app, I am either I'm going Google Maps or I'm going Waze. I can't remember the last time I actively, unless Apple does it by accident, because I click a link and I've set my default navigation app, go into Apple Maps. There's so many other options out there. And the longer it takes Apple to stick this landing, the better the other options get too. Gemini is not standing still, right? It's not sitting there, idly by. It's going to get better too, right? Maybe by 8.4, it's good. Maybe by 8.5, it's great. But that's still at the best 8.5 2 months from now?
Well, what's weird is when you see, I don't know that I can name a technology in history that changes so fast as the AI industry has changed. Like, I'm talking like weekly basis. You'll see something this week, and next week a competitor is doing this plus more, then next week another one, and then China comes in with DeepSeek and they're doing, and it's like constant nonstop iteration after iteration. And Apple is still on the every June we're going to tell you what we're doing, right? Like,
absolutely.
Does that need to change? Like,
how many
because
times
Google, ChatGPT or OpenAI, Google, Claude, like they're all, there's updates constantly. A couple times a month they're dropping something new or changing something. And Apple just comes at us once a year with, here's what we're going to do over the next 12 months. And it's hard to react to a competitor when you've already mapped things out. Like, how do you react?
How many times a week do you guys hear come out of your phone? You're like, what? And Apple's releasing products that rely exclusively on Siri functioning. You've got HomePods without displays. Like, you have to use Siri. Obviously, you can use it with your phone if you want, but you have to use that to control it. Like, if you have a weak part of what you do, like, don't actively promote it. I'm like more passionate about this than I expected to be. We started this call.
I like it.
But I feel like for a lot of people, Apple has done more disservice to AI than they have done service.
So what do we do now, though? What do we do now? Because Apple has still taken the stance that they always have, and I don't think they're going to change this anytime soon, of privacy being a paramount feature of everything they do. And it seems that a lot of the competitors are able to do things better because they're more willing to collect data that they can then use to make these things better. How do you think that's the only reason that Gemini is better than Siri? Well, I think that's a big reason, and I'm not saying that as a negative thing. The more data you have, the better your AI is going to be. That's just the fact. So when Apple says we're not going to collect data and we're just going to license like old school books that are now in the public domain and things like where it's like,
I think what Apple says is they're not going to sell data.
Oh, so they'll collect the data.
That data is most definitely being collected.
Publicly available data, but they're not collecting our data and then using our data to train massive models on everyone else. That's the stance that they confirmed to me, at least. But it still seems like their data set is way smaller than everybody else, which makes me expect that their end result, like the data you're using to train is so much smaller than everyone else that how are you going to catch up? That's basically what my question is. How do they catch up with both the privacy is paramount, but we're also like, I'm sure if you ask Apple, they will tell you that they're, a leader in the AI space.
Well, I'm sure they'll tell you, yeah, I'm sure that's what they'll say.
I'm sure that's what they'll say, but how do they actually make that true if it very clearly...
I don't know that their failures are all just from data collection. I don't know. I think there are bigger systemic failures in terms of developing that product that aren't, I think you could give them all the data in the world, and I think they have not shown that they can develop a product as good as some of their competitors. I do hear you on that. I do think that also maybe people are willing to share a bit more data if they get a better product. If that's the trade-off consumers have already made with these other apps, then maybe Apple should evolve its stance in that way somehow. But I don't think that that's the only reason. I think that seems like a scapegoat.
I'm with Taylor 100%.
Well, that's not Apple's stance. That was me talking, just to be clear. Like me saying, if you're willing to collect data to train, obviously not to sell, but just to train your model, and another company's not willing to do that, and they're working with less data, I'm gonna place my bet on the company that has more data to create a better product.
Yeah.
I think people should also understand that Gemini and Google at its heart is an advertising company, right? Like they are in the advertising business, and they happen to be able to do that via search. So the part about having access to data is probably a fair one, and it probably is some extent why Apple has failed. But to Taylor's point, it is probably a small piece of a much larger pie. We are still in 2024, and I would argue that Siri, as it exists right now,
is
2025, less functional now than Google Assistant was 3 to 4 years ago.
Well, let me tell you this,
or at least on par with what it could do 3 to 4 years ago.
Siri, if you ask Siri's turning on my phone. If you ask Siri about who won Super Bowl 3 years ago, right, it's going to point you to the web. If you ask ChatGPT, it will tell you who won 3 years ago, and give you like all the stats and data. If you enable ChatGPT in Siri and ask the question, it answers it incorrectly. Answers it incorrectly. In other words, Siri will say, here's what I found on the web, and then point you to something that gives you the answer. ChatGPT will give you the answer in its own interface. But if you ask Siri through the ChatGPT integration, it gives you an answer that is incorrect. I don't understand how adding ChatGPT made Siri worse at answering questions. Like, doesn't that sound strange? Like, why would it on the ChatGPT website give you the right answer, but when Siri goes to ChatGPT, it gives you something completely incorrect? There's a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah. Do you think that Apple adding ChatGPT was them being like, yeah, we know we've we get it. Like, use the other guys.
I think
use the other guys.
It's an admission that they weren't ready. Like, Siri is not ready to take on that task of being a chatbot, which is why Apple doesn't have a chatbot.
If I can go back to your self-driving thing, let's say you buy a brand new, say you buy another luxury, say you buy a BMW, and they license full self-driving from Tesla. And they license full self-driving from Tesla. That's BMW essentially saying, this company can do that part better than we can. We're just going to let them do what they're good at. This is clearly Apple being like,
why?
Like from the get-go, from the announcement of iOS 18, they were promoting ChatGPT. They knew what they had sucked. And they were already being like, oh, use the other guys. That you're going to talk about privacy concerns. ChatGPT gives 0 Fs about your privacy. I'd say even less than Google does. And
for sure,
we'll just boomerang back to them. Don't worry, there's a few VPNs in between, and all the stuff is stored locally on your phone. But
no, I agree. And just as an aside, how funny was it when DeepSeek launched and OpenAI was upset about the fact that it seemed like DeepSeek stole their intellectual property?
Oh, they did.
Hilarious.
No honor among thieves, right?
Exactly.
Right. Like, they have that website where you can like punch in your YouTube channel and it'll show you how many of your videos are like, I don't know even what the term is, used, stolen, whatever, by OpenAI. Like, I put mine in there. There was like 47 videos or something. Like, no one asked me. I did the work to write those scripts. I did the work to make those videos. They took it and used it, whatever. I'm not mad about it. It's fine. But it's just strange when your entire product is built on stealing everyone else's content that you did not make. You're just taking the content with no permission. And then you're upset that someone else did the same thing to you. That's wild.
It just shows that they don't hold, like, they just hold themselves to a completely different standard, and they feel like they should be able to operate with impunity, but their competitors shouldn't. And I feel like that's why people were feeling a little bit like vindicated. It's like, finally someone stuck it to the guy that's been stealing all of our content for the past God knows how long.
I certainly felt that way. And I'm fine with them taking my stuff. Take it all. Like, I feel like at some point it's all going to be in there anyway. Like, what's the delay, right? Like in 10 years, is there anything that exists on the internet that has not been used to train an AI model? Probably not. So
I just wish that I think either everything should be open or none of it should be open. Like, I think that like what's unfair is like certain companies having an advantage, getting access to more or taking more of it. Like, it's like, just make it look, it's on the web, it's available or not. I know that would be very possible or impossible to kind of like, I know that that's not probably a practical feeling, but.
Yes. Taylor, let me ask you one last question real quick. What's going on in the online world that we need to kind of pay attention to right now? Because I feel like anytime I go to your, especially like, I don't know what you call your secondary account, like Taylor 3.0 or whatever.
My meme page.
Your meme account always informs me of something that I didn't know was going on.
Wow. Well, this is more, I guess, in the tech world, but I am just so interested to see what happens with TikTok, because there's that 90-day clock and it is ticking. 90 days goes faster than you think. Trump is scrambling. It looks like his sovereign wealth fund plan thing is falling apart. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Who's gonna buy TikTok?
No one.
Is it Mike? You don't think so? Microsoft.
They don't.
Sovereign wealth fund comes together.
It's not going to be so. I mean, so the whole thing is like, the whole thing is so absurd because, again, like we have an endless amount of Chinese apps that we're giving our data to. Like the entire data privacy thing to me is just a joke. If you cared about that, you would be, again, passing some sort of universal data privacy thing. I don't see how they sell it. And then they have this like local product that competes with their international product. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Also, the US is not even TikTok's biggest market. We've got Indonesia, Brazil is going to surpass the US shortly. I mean, when India shut down, they had twice as many millions of users as the US. And I know, look, these are not as like lucrative markets, but I don't know. I think they're going to do some sort of fake deal where they like sell the like front end of the app to some company and maybe like, we're like licensing part of the algorithm, but the app is going to be essentially dead, because the ban and the law is just so restrictive. So RIP. Time to invest in. Everyone subscribe to my YouTube. That's why I'm on YouTube now.
Yes. Look up Taylor Lorenz and also User Mag. Great newsletter. Yes. I subscribe. I love it.
Usermag.co. Thanks, guys.
And that is it for this edition of Geared Up. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, you can catch John and I on YouTube. I'm at youtube.com/GearLive and John is at youtube.com/John4Lakers. Feel free to head over and subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on all the latest tech. Speaking of subscribing, you can subscribe to Geared Up in your favorite podcast app if you haven't done so already. Just search Geared Up, that's 2 words, not one, in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, Overcast, or really wherever you choose to listen. If you like what we do, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It really helps other people find the show. Geared Up is a Gear Live podcast, and you can see more from us at gearlive.com. Thank you so much for listening. For John Rettinger, I'm Andrew Edwards, and we'll catch you in the next episode.